Thank you. Being a speaker is about talking to people. However, that's all well and good. You have got to get the word out there so people know you exist. And that is what this presentation this morning, Marketing Yourself as a Speaker, is all about. Marketing takes a range of forms and a lot of different activities. It is all of those things that you do so that the world understands what you offer them. And there's some really key words in that presentation. You offer them. And I think we need to say that with a lot of emphasis on the them. One of the things that people forget, and they market very much the message that they want to hear. And that is not appropriate. As a professional speaker, and even as a trainee professional speaker, which is where I am, and it's where I suspect most people here are, you will spend approximately 80% of your available time doing marketing and sales activities, and 20% of time delivering those speeches. And that includes the practicing of those speeches. So marketing and sales, and I'm largely bundling the two of those together, and I know there are people who would really take issue with that, but all of those activities involved in getting from being who you are with your expertise and the skill to deliver that expertise through to having the opportunity to deliver those presentations, whatever they are. You're looking at 80% will be in the sales and marketing, so getting the word out there and the bookings in, and 20% of your time is developing the topics, preparing, doing the PowerPoint, whatever it is that you could regard as direct preparation of those presentations. If you're a full-time speaker, and that's how you make your living, we can therefore assume roughly that you're spending 40 hours a week, and therefore 80% of that 40 is the marketing and sales, 20% is the delivery. If we are still in the, dare I say it, the amateur area, we've got less than 40 hours to devote in that we've probably got a paid job, a family, children, activities, whatever it might be that take up some of our week. We might even want to sleep and do some other minor details occasionally. So that 168 hours shrinks back, and then we take 80% of that for marketing. It's still not that much. So what you want to do is, wherever it is possible, get that automated. And there's lots of tools nowadays that can help you with that automation. You'll be glad to know that this is not a technical presentation about all of the things that you could automate, how to develop a website, and so on. This presentation is quite specifically about the basics of marketing. In other words, who are your clients? That's question one. Who are the people out there who want to hear your message? Possibly who need to hear your message. But of course, want is more important, because we can sell to a want. Selling to a need, while it might overall deliver greater benefits, it is a lot harder to sell to a need than sell to to a want. So you need to differentiate what they want from what they need. And once you've done that, that enables you to sell them what they want while giving them what they need. And that's definitely something to keep in mind. And once you've worked that out, how can you, with your knowledge, your expertise, your skills, deliver that? Is presentations the best way to do it? Does it lend itself more to training? Do you want to be on a multi-speaker platform, or would you be better organising your own events? Does it work well in networking events? If it works well in networking events, are they business networking events? Are they much more social networking events? Are they largely female networking events? Are they largely male networking events? And a whole heap of other similar questions that you need to start thinking through if your marketing is not going to be an awful lot of effort for very, very little return. And if you take that awful lot of effort to very little return and overlay what I said a moment ago about 20% of your time, so we're already down to, we're working part-time on this because we've got a job and a family and what have you. Whatever time is available, we've got a small proportion of that. If we take that and do a whole heap of stuff where we're hitting the wrong audience, our returns are not going to be large. In order to do the marketing, there are a number of essential tools that you need. One is a website, or maybe multiple websites. There's justifications for both. Social media profiles. I've put that one definitely in plural because when I talked about website that may or may not be plural, that was thinking about whether you've got multiple topics or aspects that require different websites. Social media profiles will definitely be plural because there are so many social media platforms. I'm not suggesting that you go for all of them. Going for all of them in that tiny amount of time would definitely generate an awful lot of activity, and I think it would be fair to say 0 results. What you need to do is work out which of those platforms are most appropriate for your audience. So where are your audience hanging out? And you realise you won't be able to answer that question if you haven't answered the previous question of who are your audience. You also need a speaker's bio or a speaker's profile, and I will go into that in a lot more detail later on because that's what the focus of today's presentation is all about. You also need one or more intro to your presentation. The intro is what you give to the Toastmaster or the MC so that they can position you. And then you can open your speech with a powerful statement. You're not forced to shuffle onto the stage and then explain why you're there. That job has been done for you by your intro. That's the topic of another presentation. You need flyers. And by flyers, I'm talking about hard copy. So when you're at an event like this, you've got something that you can put in your hot, sweaty hand and hand to people. And they need to be ready and they should be with you at all times. Ideally, you need a video or two so that people who are interested in booking you can see you in action. And some of you might have seen me earlier grovelling to Colin, one of our other speakers, since some of us managed to not bring a video camera. Colin is not in that group of people, And a little bit of grovelling means that without a video camera, I'm even getting some video, I hope, from today. And last but not least, you need business cards. That's true for pretty much any professional. But you need a business card that also addresses those points. So what do you deliver? How can you solve problems for your audience? I'm sure we've all been to various events, and we get home afterwards, you go and ferret in your pocket, and out comes this many business cards. And you look at them and you think, yeah. And most of them go in the bin. The reason they go in the bin is they have a name, they have a mobile, they have a company name, they might have a job title. They don't have anything about what you do or the problem that you solve. So that is essential. Again, that's the topic for another presentation. What we're doing today is your speaker's bio or your speaker's profile. And towards the end of this session, I will give you a worksheet which will give you some pointers from which you will then be able to develop that bio if you don't have one. We're doing this because what a bio is actually anything other than a biography. How many of you would be thinking about booking me if I told you Jill Walker was born several years ago, somewhere in a hospital north of Liverpool, and since then she's done a range of things, That's all true. But to be quite honest, who cares? It's not a bio. Its role is to get you fully booked. And getting you fully booked means that you are showing people how you solve their problems. That's what people want. That's what people will pay for. And remember, every time you speak, people are paying. There are two currencies at work here. I'm not saying that from the very first booking you get, you will leave with $1 million check. That's not going to happen. The other currency is perhaps even more important than dollar, and that is time. Every one of you got out of bed at some fairly early time. You all got to Revesby by 9:45 or thereabouts. Many of you will have travelled for an hour or more to achieve that. Before you jumped in the car, you did some other things, the details of which I needn't go into. You all know what that was. You got out of bed at a time earlier than you absolutely had to on a Saturday, and as Juliana said, long weekend Saturday morning. That was a cost to you. And that cost, whatever it might boil down to, is what every member of your audience will be paying. They may additionally be paying some dollars, but don't forget that one. They're paying with time. Another point to think about is who is the audience for your speaker bio. The audience for your speaker bio is not usually the audience for your presentation. That might seem a little bit odd. But if your presentation, let's take an example from my own world. I talk about CRM and the benefits to business, how it helps salespeople. Detail of that's not important for this presentation, but that's what I do. So the people I want in my audience when that's what I'm talking about are going to be senior business people, CIOs, people like that. Those people do not organise conferences and networking events, Rotary Club meetings, and so on and so forth. The audience for my speaker's bio is the people who organise those conferences and networking events, who may not even be able to spell CRM, but they want good people. They've been handed a calendar with an event every month, every week, every quarter, whatever it is for that particular function, or maybe it's one big event and they need to find 10 speakers to put on over a weekend. Their job right now is to fill that agenda. So your bio needs to speak more to those conference organisers, executive assistants to CXOs, and that type of people if your audience is the sort of business person. If your audience is mums at home with young kids, who is organising the event that mums at home with young kids go to? Probably not a mum at home with young kids. So remember, who is the audience for the bio? We then need to think about the different formats for your bio. You probably need to have a video version of it, so a very short 1 minute-ish. Hello, this is me, this is the problems that I solve, and this is how to book me type video. You probably need a hard copy or a flyer version of it, and you definitely need a website version of it. And the website version of it, as with all of your website work, there is another audience that we need to think about. And this audience, unlike our audience and our conference organizer people, this third audience isn't even human. This third audience is the Google bots, or the various bots that spend their life, and they're not limited to 40 hours a week. They will be working 168 hours a week. Those things that crawl the internet and index what is there, so then when you or I or a speaker organizer goes to Google and says Speaker CRM Sydney, they find me, or whatever your topic is. So 3 audiences to keep in mind, and they're very, very different animals. Something else, or the next thing you need to think about when building your speaker's bio is your topic. What are the topics that you speak on? Ideally, you're looking for 3. Now that doesn't mean that you need to have, for the sake of argument, CRM, the British Football League, and how to get drunk overnight. But 3 aspects of your topic, 3 different titles with maybe different audiences or whatever is appropriate. Then you want to think about the audience and what each of those topics, or where each of those topics will appeal as an audience, and remembering that they are not you. If you are not an expert in your subject, if you don't know the material that you deliver, you've got problems way ahead of all of the stuff that I'm talking about. So you're not marketing to you. When you think about those audiences, what is keeping them awake at night? What are the things that they really need to solve? And use those points to then develop your actual titles. The title is different to the topic. So in my case, for example, my topic is CRM. One of my titles is Taming the Beast of CRM Data. It's about CRM, But if I were to go out to conference organisers and say I will talk on CRM, not a hope. Taming the beast of CRM data appeals to some of my audience, or some of my possible audience. What are the goals of those people? What are they trying to achieve? When they leave whatever the event at which you've spoken, what do they want to be able to see? Yes, I understand that. I can do that. Start thinking about all of those issues. And then finally, make it appealing. There's 1,000,001 of these out there. So you need to be making yours be the one that jumps out and is the one that gets held on to. That actually applies not just to your speaker bio, but to all of the other collateral. But given that here we are focused on speaker's bio, it definitely applies there. You've got to write it in a language that all three of your audiences understand. So the first and probably the most important, again, is your conference organizer, the person who will book you. Second is your audience, and third is the bots. All three of those need to understand the language. So, what I'd now like to do is to hand out this worksheet, and Juliana, if I can get you to take some. Oh, actually, that was a significantly disastrous split in half. I can get some back. There should be extras. So this worksheet is not a speaker's bio per se. What this is a series of questions which, if you work through, you will then have a lot of the material that you need to build that speaker's bio. Now, do we have a spare copy of it? Wonderful, thank you. Is there another one, or did I manage to print exactly the right? Okay, can Juliana get one as well? Or? So you need to remember that your speaker's bio is designed to what? Sell you, yes. Get you booked or fully booked. Create interest. Go on, Colin, put them out of their misery.
I was going to say, you look professional.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
It needs to include your bio, but only brief. It needs to include your topics, and for each topic, I would also look at having 3 sub-points as to what people will get out of it. So if you look at the worksheet, work through, and you may need multiple copies of this to do it in completion, but what is your topic, your broad topic? So I told you my topic is CRM, my main one. So whatever is your equivalent of CRM. Who is your speaking audience? So think that one through. For me, it is senior business people, CIOs, CFOs, and so on. Then comment briefly on their skills, interests, and demographics. By demographics, we're looking at, are they male, are they female, are they young, are they old, do they live in the city, Do they live out back? Are they scientific? Are they arty-farty? And a whole heap of other things. But you, for your topic, should be able to answer these things fairly quickly. Then think about who is your booking audience. And then what is the relationship between your booking audience and your speaking audience? What sort of communication is happening between the booking audience and your speaking audience? Is there an overlap? Is there a big overlap, a small overlap, no overlap? How knowledgeable about the topic will your booking audience be compared to your actual audience? Obviously, your presentation needs to speak to your speaking audience at the level that they are at. Otherwise, they will either be asleep or you're condescending to them. The same is true for your booking audience. And given that they are almost certainly a different group of people, that can be challenging. Once you've worked all of that out, work out what are the biggest problems that those people will have. And then, of all of those problems, which of those problems do your presentations solve? You then need some very specific things that relate to your presentations. For each of your topics, develop a 50-word synopsis of that topic. The people who are booking you and marketing you do not want to read an essay. They do not want to see the whole of your PowerPoint. That's not what they're there for. Make it easy for them. Give them that 50-word synopsis. What are the 3 key takeaways of that topic? And then what is the sexy title? So what is your Taming the Beast of CRM data for your topic CRM? Obviously not those 2 examples, but work out what your CRM is and then what your Taming the Beast of CRM data is. And then do that 3 times, because you will need more than one topic. You also need to work out and start working on the collateral for your bio. Some of these are easy, and some of them are really quite hard. So make sure that you have got full contact details that you are able to use. I would recommend an email and a mobile number. But whatever it is, it needs to be some form of contact details that people can get in touch with you when they need to get in touch with you. And for an awful lot of booking people, they will be doing this in the evenings. They've got a day job that keeps them out of mischief 40 plus hours a week. They're organising these networking events or whatever in their evenings. So having a number that only works from 9 to 5 is probably not a good move, unless you're in the position where you know that that will work for them. You then need a professional headshot. So that is just you, head and shoulders. And when that's done, you should be dressed appropriately. So if you're doing a business topic, you probably want to be wearing a jacket and a shirt. If your audience is a different audience, maybe rural, maybe mums at home, maybe a business type photo isn't appropriate. It might be off-putting to that audience. So something more casual might be appropriate. Again, when you know your audience, answering these questions should work. There's no light on. Have I overrun? I'm going off the lights, but...
Only 30 minutes or 45.
Okay, thank you. Get a photo of you speaking with the audience visible. So if I were using this session, maybe a camera from over there that gets me on the side and gets you people visible would work. Get some video so people can see that you can string a sentence together, that you really do know what you're talking about. Once you start getting bookings, gather the logos of 3 or more of those clients and get permission to use them. One of the advantages of doing free or very cheap speaking gigs is that you can ask for payment in other currencies. And one of those currencies is permission to use their logo and a testimonial. If they're not paying you for your time in dollars, it is fair that you should get something. Then a testimonial about that presentation. Work so that you've got some blog articles about your subject. Ideally, you want to have an article written about you by someone else. Now that doesn't mean that that someone else has to find you and do it all and then come to you and say, look, I've done this. In fact, the chances are you need to do the lion's share of that work and find the someone else, maybe even do some of the writing for them. But it looks and feels like somebody else has written the article. And get logos of events where you have spoken. So you see on the bottom of the worksheet, I've given you a table where you can work through which of those things have you got, which can you get, and while there isn't room in this table, you then want to put in place a plan of campaign to achieve those that you've not already achieved, that you can achieve. Once you've got all of that material, you are then in a position to go to a website person or a graphic designer, or maybe even yourself. In the early days, it quite often has to be yourself, and collate them into a website, a flyer, a business card, and all of the other things that you need. So now, just briefly, any questions before I close? Okay.
So David's facilitating your question.
Oh, okay.
To introduce David, please. Thanks.
Thank you for an informative session. Now I'd like to call upon distinguished Toastmaster David Fisher.
Thank you very much, Jill. A wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
It's very, very full. It's a hard world out there, isn't it? It really is.
Oh, yes.
And that's a project, just getting the players together.
It probably is for many people.
I wonder if you have any questions for Jill on anything to do with the presentation.
Jill, you spoke about the audience, the booking audience and the speaking audience. What is the difference? Like, when you say booking audience, are you talking about an agent?
No, none of this actually touches on speakers' bureaus and agents, because in all honesty, with the bureaus, what is generally said is by the time a speakers' bureau is likely to be interested in you, you will have achieved enough to not need them. So what I am looking at when I say that is your actual audience is the people who will come to your event and sit in the chairs and listen to your presentation. They're the people that you want ultimately to talk to. Your booking audience is the person or people who organise those events. So it might be somebody who organises a networking event. It might be the secretary of somebody who's putting on a sales conference. It could even be a VPE of a Toastmasters group, although I think in that case the difference between the audience and the booker is going to be narrower. But in general, it's the person who organises the event.
Thank you very much. Great question. Great question. I'm interested in the difference again between marketing for their needs and their wants. Could you explain that?
What they need is what, when you talk to them and look at them and look at what they're doing in life, you can say, you need. I'm trying to think of an example that I could give. Totally hypothetical example, but maybe you need to go talk to somebody about your wardrobe. You need to look a lot smarter than you currently do. That is not likely to sell you. But what they might want is to find a date on Saturday night. But you're not likely, you might, but you're not likely to find a date if you've got stained shirt, torn jeans, hair that hasn't been dealt with for 6 months, BO that you can smell from outside the door, etc., etc. But while all of those things could be true of somebody, nobody here, I hasten to add, pointing that out to them is not going to work. And what you need to think is, if we persuade this person to take a shower, get their hair done, get a new suit of clothes, yada, 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 what might they achieve? So a date on Saturday night might be what that person wants. So we're more likely to be able to sell to helping them get a date to highlighting where the shower is.
Thank you. Great example. Kevin, you have a question?
Is that what we would traditionally call the hook? So that's the why you would be able to attract them to come to your talk?
It's related to that, but it's possibly not exactly. The hook tends to be used within the presentation itself. So that's what gets people to really sit up, I need to listen to this. Whereas the things I'm talking about are before you get up here on stage.
Do you have any other questions?
Yes, I was maybe quite ignorant, but what does CRM?
I was going to ask that question.
Okay. It actually stands for Customer Relationship Management, and it's a whole business philosophy. But for the purposes of this talk, it's actually not overly important. It's an example, but it is where I play.
Other questions? So I've got a question. You're talking about how do I find out what sort of problem the audience has. And then I noticed that you talked about choosing the topic about halfway through the presentation, so the topic's not the most important thing.
You can't.
There's a relationship there, isn't there?
There is. Well, the topic is probably where you've got expertise. You can't just say, yes, speaking about the English Premier League football, I'd like to do that. Well, I mean, I suppose in theory I could, but the probability of me being able to generate a professional image and get the expertise is really very slim. So there's other things that come ahead of the topic.
Which is, goes back to the wants and needs.
It does. Well, actually that comes a little bit later, but it's, in many ways, all of these things are intermixed and you need to do all of them. And you probably could argue the toss as to the order that you do them in. But for me, the order that I did that presentation in made logical sense. Now, it may be for you that you'd rather do something that came later, earlier, and so on. If that works for you, great.
Can I just ask something?
Sure.
How do you find the organisers? Where do you
Ah.
That's the big question.
That's a massive question, and it really depends who they are. So to give you a couple of examples, if you're speaking on business topics, chambers of commerce and similar, Rotary. So both of those are organisations with a plethora of branches. There will be a central website that you can use to then go to and then start contacting others. Another way of looking for them is to find adverts of upcoming events. So watch, if you're doing a more local type topic, watch local press, and possibly there is an event coming up next week, next month. Now, you are very unlikely to get a booking at that event next week, next month, because it's almost certainly all been planned by the time that advert was placed. But does that event happen the following month, the following quarter, the following year? If it does, try and contact them now-ish, or maybe go to next week, next month's event if that's feasible. Speak to the organiser and say that you are interested for the next one. So there's lots and lots of places, but there's no one answer. There isn't a website that says speaker contacts, click here, unfortunately.
Another question to do with the video. Would it be advisable to have different videos, maybe a hard sell video, maybe a video about yourself and the other types?
It certainly can't do any harm, because once you've got them, you can use them. If you haven't got them, you can't use them.
We have run out of time. I have just one more question. How do you spell CRM?
It starts with an S, David.
Oh, good. So I'd like to present you with this token of coming to, or being here to present to us on the marketing.
Thank you.